With over 10 years production and design under their belts, Axopar have cemented themselves as the leaders in performance and design when it comes to adventure day boats. The Axopar 28 was the original Axopar and ran for over 10 years in production across 2 different generations. The Axopar 29 has now launched into the market in 2024, taking over the mantle of the famous Axopar 28. It's got a lot to live up to, with big shoes to fill from the Axopar 28. So today we're going to take a look at the performance, the handling and the new hull design that is brought to the market in this amazing new package. If you haven't seen part 1, do check out the walkthrough video on this very vessel with my colleague Russell to see the features and fit out specific to this boat. We hope you enjoy. Now it all starts at the hull with Axopar. It's all about the performance. So before we take this boat for a burn and see what she can do, we're going to head into a beach so we can have a look at the new shape and the new design on this new model. So we're off on the beach. Beautiful beach, very easy to beach these boats. As you can see, not too far to jump down on the bow here. So taking a look at the hull design itself, you know, Axopar, they're renowned for these wave-piercing bows. We've got a reverse entry. It's not quite as steep as it was, or not quite as reverse as it was on the Axopar 28. But what we immediately notice is that above the main chine, so the main chine is here, and above the main chine we've got a lot more body in the bow. This is going to give us more buoyancy, and what that means is this chine here is even bigger. So I'd say on this smaller platform of the 29, this chine is almost as big as it is on the 37, the much bigger boat. So what we're seeing is much more volume in the bow. The flare up the top here as well is much bigger. So we can see much more of a curve here. Again, great for dispelling water off and away from the bow, especially when you're running downwind or down swell. Overall, it's the Axopar bow that we know, it's the hull that we know, but it's the next generation. Much like the 37 when it went from Series 1 to Series 2, this is the new and improved version, building on all that knowledge that Axopar have from their previous models. The additional belly in the bow here also gives us a lot more volume inside. So this is how we're able to get a berth or a bow compartment forward on this Axopar, because we're not too skinny in the bow. As we make our way back, the first chine turns into a second chine. So running all the way aft, we've got 2 big chines to deflect water and push it back to the ocean. You can just about see the first of the 2 forward steps there. So they are for sucking in air under the hull. The boat rides on a layer of bubbles, helps with efficiency and performance. That combined with the deep V gives it all the handling and all the performance that Axopar are renowned for. It's getting a bit swelly here now, so I think we'll make our way and we'll go see what this thing can do. So the performance test today is going to form 2 parts. First of all, we'll do straight line running to give us some fuel calculations with this 400 horsepower Mercury outboard that we have. Talk about engine options in a minute. The second part of the test will be true performance, so putting it in some turns, finding some chop, seeing how it goes through ferry wash, etc. The weather today is not too severe. It's quite a nice Sydney Harbour day, to be honest, but we'll go up between the heads and try and find some mess to play around in, and then we've always got the Manly ferry we can play in their wash a little bit as well. Engine options on the Axopar 29. The standard engine is a 300 horsepower V8. This is a very popular engine. This is the base engine on the model, perfectly sufficient for propelling this boat. The second option is a V10 Mercury 350 horsepower. Now this is a new model from Mercury, it's a V10 and it's replaced the old L6 350. And this is actually, despite the more cylinders, it is more fuel efficient than the old inline 6 engine. The final option, which is the one we have on this boat, is a V10 400 horsepower. Now that's the true performance. That's the engine for people wanting to get the most out of their performance and handling. It will burn more fuel than the other engines, but that's the one that's going to give you the funnest and most enthralling drive. So we're at idle speed now. We're doing about 650 revolutions per minute on the engine, and we're doing about 3.5 knots. We're going downwind a little bit, so maybe 3.2 without the wind, burning about 3.8 litres per hour. So if I bring this up, I'll take the boat up to kind of just off the plane, but kind of a fast off the plane speed. So off the plane speed, we're sitting on about 9 knots now, and we're about 2,200 RPM, and we're burning about 22 litres per hour. What I'll do now, as I go over the 11, 12, 13, 14 knot mark, There we go, 15, 16 knots and now on the plane, and it's jumped up really quickly. In fact, it jumped up very quickly to 21, 22 knots, and this is what I call a slow cruising speed. The hull is planing, it's in an efficient state. At this speed, we're doing 20 knots on the dock, and we're doing about 3,200 RPM. Fuel rate here is about 35 litres per hour. Okay, so we're up at about the 28, 29 knot mark now, and when we're on that speed, we're burning about 45 litres per hour. So that's kind of your optimal fast cruising speed, and that'll give you about a range of about 250 nautical miles, which is quite considerable for quite a small boat. Obviously very capable offshore, so there's lots of places to explore at that kind of speed. It's a 400 litre fuel tank on the 29, which is an increase from the 300 litre fuel tank on the 28, so we've got even more range and even more versatility on this boat. Take it up a bit more. I've hardly trimmed up at all. I'm trimmed up about 8 degrees, but as I go higher now, I'm going to go up to a fast cruise. So we're sitting on 38 to 39 knots, and I'll trim up a little bit more, trim up to about 20 degrees now. The boat's sitting really nicely. It's very well balanced. We'll talk about how it feels in a little bit. But just for the fuel consumption, so 35 knots, we're burning 80 litres per hour here at 4,900, about 5,000 RPM. As we get into the flatter water here, I'll just take it up to the maximum speed possible. I'm going to trim up again, trimming up to about 25 degrees. And we're going up to 40 knots, 41, 42, climbing quite quick. 6,200 plus 6,100 RPM. And about 127 litres of fuel per hour. We're coming into 46 knots here. Yeah, I'll pull it back before we get to the speed limit zone. That gives you a really good idea of the fuel numbers on this vessel. So just before we head out and see what this thing can do in a bit of chop, I'm going to put it into a couple of quite hard turns, just to see entry speed, how hard we're turning and what our exit speed of the turn is. So I'm doing that 28 knot speed. Now I'm going to turn to port, and I'm going to go as hard as I dare. And as I do, I'm going to trim down and put more power on in the turn. Finally, hold on. So we're actually doing 26 knots in a turn. I'd say the radius of this turn is about 50 meters, maybe 30, 40 meters. 26 knots. We've only dropped a couple of knots. And again, as I come off out of the turn, trim up a little bit and back off. Now the next test I'm going to do, I'll just turn the boat around. The next test I'm going to do is the same maneuver, but I'm not going to apply any extra power in the turn. So I'll get us going with 28 knots in a nice straight line. So 28 knots and about 4,300 RPM. Okay, just let the speed drop off back to 28. And as I go into the turn, I will trim down. I'm pushing through the turn, same turning radius that I had. So speed has dropped down to about 23. So we're only dropping about 5 knots of speed there in the turn. And as I straighten up, straight away, 23, up to 24, we're coming out of the turn nicely. So that's really a good indication of a good hull, is how much speed you lose in a turn. It does depend on how fast you're turning, but obviously you want to maintain efficiency all along. If I open it up to full speed now, I'm going to trim up to where I was, to about 20 degrees, coming up 6,000 RPM, and I'm going to go into a turn. We went into the turn at about 39 knots. We're going around, I'm not going as hard as we did last time, but I am turning as hard as I dare, and we're going around with a lot of G-force in here. Turning radius of about 80 meters, and I'm adding power just to see what we can do. We're still on 32, 33 knots around that turn. So again, we only lost about 5 knots of speed, and that was adding power. So it's pretty cool to see this hull trim all the way down, hard lock, increase the power, and it just goes around us. We're not losing any grip at all. Come out of the turn, trim up, and we're off again. So this is, the Axopar has been referred to as the Porsche of the waterways. Yeah, I'd say this boat does that, and it does absolutely more. Reminds me a lot of the bigger models, this kind of handling, which we'll talk about a little bit when we get further out. Okay, so as we're heading out, I'm just going to talk about the driver's position on this Axopar 29. I do feel very secure. The windscreen actually wraps around quite far, so where I'm sitting, I'm actually, the windscreen goes to behind me, so I'm completely out of the wind. My hair's moving a little bit, but my face, my ears, my passenger next to me, we're completely out of the wind, feel very protected. The footwell is sunk down here as well, so again, I'm now a little bit lower in the boat, helps me feel a little bit more secure when I'm driving. I'm on the bolster at the moment. The seat's got a bolster, or it can be the standard seat. The bolster's the most comfortable. I can absorb a bit of the landing with my knees if I need to, and I've got one foot on a good perch here, so I feel quite secure. It's also good to note I've got really good handholds here, and on that side as well for my passenger. So it certainly feels like you're driving a bit of a performance vehicle, a race car on the water. So let's see what we can do. We're heading out now at about 30 knots. It's a bit of swell now, but it's very wash riding over it. And it's landing very softly. I can really feel that Axopar hull is driving itself. We've talked about it in previous videos, but it's not a hands-on hull for maneuvering. It's very balanced. You can let go of the wheel and it tracks in a straight line. Initial impressions, now this is actually only the second time I'm driving this boat, and the first time I've actually put it through its paces. So there's a 1 or 2 foot chop blowing out of the harbour. We've got a slight northwesterly wind. And as I get a bit further out, we can feel that ground swell from I think what looks like a northeasterly swell coming in through the heads. So initial feelings in this position is the hull feels like a much bigger boat. It feels much more capable than your typical 29, 28 foot vessel, which I think is testament to the hull design. And it's obviously a lot of things have been learned on the 37 Revolution range, as well as the Axopar 45, the newer model. So it really does feel like, it's riding much like the Axopar 45 does. It's very soft. So up above 30 knots now, and 34, 35 knots running across the swell. It is not that comfortable out here. So I've been heading into the swell, heading out here, sitting on about 24 knots. And this engine pairing on this boat, I can tell it's the biggest one they offer. We're going into the troughs. We're not getting water over the bow. If we do get a bit of air under the hull, we're not launching off the waves with the bow 10 feet in the air. We're launching off the waves level, and the bow is landing level with the rest of the boat. So we're landing on the keel. It feels very solid. That sharp keel is really catching us nicely. 28 knots. Running down the swell again, sitting really, really nicely. It's quite good fun to drive this boat. We are as capable as the bigger vessels, so I think this hits a real sweet spot for those looking for the performance of a much bigger boat on a smaller platform, on a nimble platform like the smaller vessels that we offer. What I'm doing out here today, I've obviously got a kill cord attached or a kill lanyard attached. I wouldn't be doing this if I had my family or my friends on board, or if I wasn't trying to prove a point. So this is for demonstration purposes, so that you can see what the boat can do. I've obviously got a film crew on board. I've got Marnie, and I've also got a boat with me as well. So if I was out here on my own, I would be wearing a life jacket for sure. The landings are soft, feels responsive. 34 knots now, 35 knots. It's just well seated. It doesn't feel wobbly or agitated. And again, I talked about the self-driving hull. We're running down swell now at 37 knots, and the hull is so well seated in the water. You can take your hands off the wheel. I wouldn't advise it. I'd always keep one hand on the wheel and one on the throttle for safety. But this is really nuts. This is, the fact that this 28 foot, 29 foot platform can have so much performance and feel so reassuring, it's phenomenal. In these conditions, it feels solid. It's a solid boat. We know the Axopar hulls are amazingly good, very well constructed, and the superstructure feels good as well. The only noise I can hear is my VHF cable tapping against the bulkhead. So really not too many complaints. Woo! Yeah, this is it. I think if you're looking for the supercar on the water, this is the one for you. There we go. We're coming into flatter water now, so I am pushing it up. It's windy as well, very windy at the moment. I can see a ferry just up ahead, so I'm going to try go see if we can jump its wake. It's a good day for jumping wakes, I think. So the wake of the freshwater, the famous Sydney ferry, 35 knots, absolutely heating it up. No problem at all. Yeah, it just bites. You know, when you turn the corner, it bites and it wants to go round. We're not getting any chine walk in the corners. It's just stable and solid at speed, which is all you can ask for an adventure boat, day boat. Obviously available in multiple different setups. We're on the top today, also available as a cross cabin if you were going to run a little bit longer, or maybe some more offshore stuff, maybe an offshore fishing boat. I think this is the boat to buy for the summer. I always say this every time I test an Axopar like this, but I think the model I test becomes my favorite Axopar. You know, we've done the 22 like this, the 25 like this. We've tested the 45 overseas in different conditions, and it's just when you put these boats through their paces and when you have confidence in the boat, it's mind-blowing to see what they can do. Absolutely mind-blowing. Going back into Middle Harbour now, swimming up nice and high, 46 knots, 47. There we go. These V10s, they just sound good. They're purring. It's doing, you know, 6,200 RPM, but it doesn't feel stressed. It doesn't feel overloaded. It's got the power, and it's the right package. The conditions out there were bigger than I expected, which was good. I was worried we weren't going to be able to find enough chop and water to put the boat through. But yeah, look, it performed. It does drive different to the 28. You can tell it's a new hull. It's the new evolution in the Axopar range. And looking at this model, we're now on Series 3 of this hull. If you think about Axopar 28 Series 1, 28 Series 2, and now the 29. So for a vessel like Axopar, in 10 years to be in their third generation, I think there's nothing else that compares in terms of the reputation and the quality and the performance on the ride that Axopar are renowned for. You'll notice a bit of salt here, just on the windscreen. Yes, we did get salt on the windscreen. It was very choppy offshore. It was very windy offshore. And if you're not getting salt on the windscreen on a boat test, you're not testing the boat properly. So very impressed. I think this boat will suit the Australian market perfectly. Sydney Harbour, East Coast, WA, all parts of Australia. This is the boat. My name is Joe Fox from the team at Eyachts. We hope you enjoyed this video. If you do want to see more Axopar related content, do click like and subscribe to be updated with more videos similar to this.